Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus Three Futures and Commodities Show. We are recording Sunday night in honor of first weekend of NFL. Sunday night football is on, and we're recording Sunday night market analysis. So, the actual reality is that Barry's been traveling. I was traveling this weekend. So this was the only time we could get it done, and we wanted to make sure we got it out for you guys for the week in the market. So we're recording at about 8:30 Eastern. Globex is open, and we will be covering a few commodities and, of course, the full spin through the markets with Barry, as there's a lot going on
Hmm.
as we enter this time period where, again, we've got these windows, we've got these time counts, cycles are expiring, we're at a critical support resistance level. So which way are we going? Let's see what the odds say and what the important levels are. How you doing,
So
Barry? Settled back in at home?
settle back in. Yep, yep. By the next podcast, it'll everything will be normal.
Back to normal,
Back to
right?
normal.
Yeah,
Right now we're still,
just in time
yeah,
for an eclipse
yep. There you go. That's perfect.
to throw us really off kilter.
Hmm.
Anyway,
So
I see
yeah.
we've got another push here higher
Hmm.
in the
So,
S&P.
and you said when you said which way, for the last 3 weeks or so, it's been both ways, right? We'll
Yeah.
just kind of go down and go up and do some kind of reversal. So it being Sunday night, let's make this. I'm gonna try to get through this quickly, but also give you guys just information you need. And the good news is we're still kind of wrapping around this 64.53. So that's, basis the daily and the cash market. That's really where we have to focus. Friday, we came and really tested that the 64.53 boundary, and then we bounced up and closed a little higher. And the key thing is, Thursday, Friday, we managed to get above it and hold above, regardless of whatever the news is. I mean, looking at the levels, we were able to manage to hold above. So that's one note. There's a lot of little notes that we're going to go through. And obviously putting it all together depends on, Monday morning, Monday opening, Tuesday opening, day by day we take it. And if you guys want to follow us on X, we both post during the day, and I post something for the S&P every morning, and Ben's posting stuff for the Nasdaq and all the other markets that he covers all day long. So and the links in the description. So 64.53 is the one to watch. And I think we're gonna, we keep saying, well, every week, we're gonna get some volatility, and every week we've had some volatility. So
Yeah.
I think that streak of volatility is about to finish. Like we're gonna finish that off this week. This is my take. Now, last week I talked about, hey, it's not textbook, but we do have three drives to a high. We got one, two, three, and I said it's not quite textbook, but it's good enough to count as a three drives, long as the third drive holds. But then we get the Friday's price action, and I'm like, oh my God, now that's pretty much of a textbook. Three drives, everything looks good, and in three drives looks like three drives, and it looks all bullish because we just made a new third high for that series. And on the day of the third high in a three drive pattern, it looks bullish. Of course, it's supposed to look bullish. Otherwise, what's the point, right? Um, so in this case, not only did we hit the three drives, but we for 2 days we managed to hold about 64.53. And like Ben always says, the market always sort of thinks like a criminal. And if that's the case, to screw the most people, if you want to take this a little bit further, the thing would be to take out the low, Friday low, give us a reversal there. Then I think that would flip the switch to the downside, which would be the same as saying taking out 64.53 and getting stuck below would kind of confirm this. It'd be the earliest confirmation for this three drives, if that's what it is. Can we get another high into this a few days later? I don't know. I suppose it could. I mean, I've seen patterns get really marked up during certain times. So far it's a very clean three drives, and if you guys are watching in momentum, it's giving all kinds of divergence. I'm sure there are people posting that. So that's what we have at hand. What I don't like is that everybody's seeing it. That's when it's a little bit dicey. That being said, let's get back to our analysis and what we're actually going to be looking at. What we're going to be looking at is 64.53. We're going to be looking at Friday's low to be held or taken out coming next week, ideally Monday, Tuesday. Now, it is possible we go up a little bit higher, contact the line and then turn down. But whatever the case is, above 64.53, we want to be a little bit suspicious about any kind of betting to the downside because we do have that level. At the same time, starting in August, we've been sort of mean reverting to this 64.50 line. And now we swung to the other side. We came back and touched it. So what happens next? Do we go down and come back and retouch it? Obviously, this kind of a game can't continue to go on. And I don't think it will. I think we're going to sort of terminate this phase next week, one way or the other. Next week's price action is going to be rife with distortion or possible false moves, false breaks. So be careful of that because that's kind of what happens right before something terminates, right? Some kind of a pattern, even like 3 drives terminates. Possible that we get a lot of head fakes. So watch out for that. But for the cash, all I can say is that now, if you guys have been watching, we had going from the April low, we had 135 coming in here on August 20th. That was a high. We had other cycles expiring up in here, August 15th, right through here. Then we thought, well, great. We had the cycle, we had a false break. Okay, that should be it. Fine, great. Then we gapped down and rallied right back up into it, made a new high. So does that terminate all these other cycles? I think if we can get above and hold above these other highs, that would be the case. But we haven't been able to clear 64.84 and hold above it, right? We're crisscrossing, kind of poking both ways, but even Friday, we kind of straddled it, if you guys can see it, which is pretty much where the close came in. It's, if you look at these two highs and here, if you just drop eyeball a line right in there, it's 64.80, 84, and the close was 81. So it's right in there. So I think it's too close to call. Not that we have to call it because we're not trading it right this second, but that's how I'm looking at it. You want to look at the pattern, that's how I would be looking at it. And to the upside, sure, there's another pattern that could come out of this if we take this out. We'll wait for that and see what happens. But sure, we can pump to the upside if 54.53 is held. 53, 2 points lower, yeah, 53, 55, 53. So that's the story with the cash. Let's take a quick look at, this is the calendar chart for the ES. This is a continuation chart. And here we also squared out last week. And what happened here was, sure, we squared out, but it's a fresh square. We had resistance a couple of times. We can say 3 times we've tried it. And this last one looks a little bit like a false break. And so far we have an intraday and the market looks pretty happy. Just to keep that in mind, not anything huge tied to that. Now here we're coming off the October low. And this is a super important level. I'm not sure what to say because I feel kind of bad. We've been grinding back and forth. And when we keep talking about every week, hey, we have to settle above or below. And we just seem to straddle it. We'll go a little bit above, a little bit below, and a little bit above. And now we're a little bit above. So the idea here would be that we'd need to continue to hold above without, the lows would have to come into 64.70, meaning we have to hold above it, right? So far we haven't. We'd go up, we'll slip down. So any of these lows, like we saw last couple of weeks, would have to end up above it, right? Now, with Friday's bar holding above it? Yeah, it is. So to validate the idea of 64.70 is holding and we're flying out into the 68.25, or at least halfway there, let's say 66.50, 55, that area, we'd have to hold this 64.70 and hold above that in any kind of a pullback. And so far, look, we've been pumping both sides, so it's not over, the tug of war. And I'm talking about line in the sand being 64.70 because that's what it looks like. Again, it looks like we can finish this tug of war next week, and it's going to be it could be epic. So let's watch this closely. There is I would say a good chance, there could be head fakes in here. We take it day by day, obviously, because we're not long-term position holders. So for us, it's not a big deal. But the 64.70 is going to be very important for the E-mini going forward. So you guys watch that. That's on the continuation chart. And you guys are probably wondering, well, how many levels do we have to watch? Well, you got to watch one in the cash chart, one for the daily, and we'll talk about the weekly. ES, we have the continuation chart levels, and then we have the current month, which is about to run out. So for now, I think, we pushed up into the quarter square. So 65.09 is really the resistance. The three drives is fairly clean, I think, on this. So, and the 90 that terminated here at the quarter square and in time, it is still there because, we really couldn't hold above the 65.09, right? Every time we poke a little bit, come back down. And Friday was a typical kind of a false break move and came back into the fold. So all the action is right under it. I think for some reason, Friday's high and low it's going to be important for next week, mainly because it's straddling pretty much all the levels that we talked about, except for one. So here, 65.09, we're at 65.05. You see, it's close, right? So if we can manage to hold above it, fine. We have more upside. If we don't, then obviously we're going to test to the downside. And like I said, if you guys can catch us on X, I think all this will be a lot more meaningful because we continue the story on the 30-minute chart. All right, looking at the Dow futures, it's encouraging that we're holding about this 44,842. It looks like we're putting some time in. I'm not completely trusting it because, because everybody else is not on board. Everybody else is straddling the lines or a little bit under, a little bit above, not quite done it. But Dow seems to be holding so far. And if it can continue to hold through any kind of correction, I think at least the Dow's in good shape. So that's what I can say for that. Putting it all together, we can't really put it all together. And Ben, I know you're going to cover the NASDAQ and all the different time frames, but just to take a quick peek at the NASDAQ, just to tie up the loose ends here. The thing with the Dow is Dow's sort of, made new highs and NASDAQ's here making lower highs. Last week, we took this out. So that was a little bit of a false break to the downside. And this is potentially a false break over this little high we had the week before. Not to mention that the termination that we had at the 90-day run still holds. So long as the NASDAQ high is in place, personally, I can't make a whole lot of judgments about the other things. Like, we're about to rip it another 1,000 points or a couple of hundred points. We have to wait for this consolidation to finish. I mean, we had a good run through here, but then, once we buckled up after the cycle, up until here, we were waiting for this. Now we're consolidating here.
Barry,
Yeah.
also that NASDAQ high holding at the 90
Mm-hmm.
is important for another reason because remember, it was the NASDAQ, the Mag 7 that led us up.
Right. Correct.
That led this last bull run.
Mm-hmm.
So if it can't make a new high, that's also something to note and put in the back of your mind.
Absolutely. And it's a really interesting play between all the different contracts because they're all at key levels, and the leader just can't, seem to get out of its own way. So let's see what happens next week. This is what we're left with, and I feel like time is running out for this. So we ought to decide this one way or the other. And of course, for the NASDAQ to decide one way, let's say to the upside, we'll have to take out the high high at the 90 count. So that's that. Let's jump to the weeklies really quick. Here's cash chart, and this is a really long-term chart, and I'm looking at the 6440. Yeah, so 6440. Practically last month we've been straddling this level, and we haven't been able to, good news, bad news, we haven't been able to really get above it. Sure enough, we've been pushing higher, but it's more of a struggle. You can tell just by the price action. So let me zoom in a bit. It's been a bit of a struggle, and we're straddling the line, and we saw that happening in a couple of other places. So up until this settles, it's difficult to make a big take on the direction. But what we do know is until this really settles above, it's a little bit difficult to be bullish, especially after a run like this, and especially after you saw the NASDAQ counts that terminated at the high. So that's that. So 6440, we want to watch this, see if we get under and get stuck below, or if we're holding above on all the corrections, or at least a couple of corrections. So that's on the weekly. Takes a little bit of time, but you guys know the story on the daily. So, and this is coming off the COVID lows, and again, look, we've been talking about this every week, and 6530 is 270 degrees up, and this 6400 to 6530. And I remember when I drew this up, I was kind of joking about, it's kind of wide, but that's just kind of how it looks. And you can tell once we got there, we're basically banging both sides for a month practically, right? So it's holding. Now, I don't have to make this up. So we have to take this line out, the 6530, in order to sort of start start into the next square. Up until then, we are firmly inside this 220 last 45 degree square. And there isn't a whole lot to add to it, but if you look at the bars, we want to see, obviously we want to see last week's low getting taken out. That would confirm it. Yeah, it's a little 100 points down, but what to do? It's a weekly chart, and that's how we have to look at it. But you guys have the daily levels, and there are plenty of other levels you can will start to go off, give you the red, give you the direction early on. But this is what the weekly looks like. I think it's good to have a snapshot of this and where the 6530 is and how we're banging up against it. And if we fail here, that means it's coming, it's terminating a bunch of cycles, all this stuff that's kind of been holding up. And it's not like there's a cycle terminating every day, but we just haven't completed or extended the cycles that we already terminated. And that's why we're kind of stagnant for the last month. And for the last month, we've been talking about the same levels and the same explorations, because this is where the market is. It's not like the market's running. We're 100 points away every week. We're not. We're basically stuck in the same spot. Does that make sense, Ben? I'm sort of trying to
No, I
bring it
think
together.
100% makes sense, and you can think of it this way: the zone that Barry identified way before we got here is showing to be a place where the battle is really taking place, which is
Mm-hmm.
why we haven't gotten out of here, because sellers and buyers are kind of at a stalemate. And until that resolves, we have to just wait, to make the
Mm-hmm.
bets, right? Because
Yeah,
we
yeah.
you only want to bet when the odds are with the odds in your favor. And at this point, you can't bet long with the odds in your favor, and you can't bet short with the odds in your favor yet. So we have to be
Mm-hmm.
patient until we see the point where those odds flip.
Right. And you can see something similar happen at this last same square, the 50% level. I mean, we banged up on it, we squared out, we pulled back to the full square, 225, ran back up, a couple of weeks, back into the 50%, 5 weeks sideways. Here we're 4 weeks sideways, right? And the fifth week, what happened? We did a false break, and bam. So,
Yep.
and God, it'd be fun for me to go back and see what we talked about here because it's
Right,
probably
right.
similar stuff, right? So
Yeah, absolutely.
and this that's why, if it looks like we're spinning around, well, when we get into these areas like that, which happens after a big run, right? We had a big old run and then spent this time getting everybody buying the dip, and then wham, flush everybody out and start a fresh leg. And that's kind of what's happening here. It's my sense just by looking at the chart. And of course, technicals are there, so nothing we can say against that.
I
So,
guess the important thing is we have the levels, right? We know the levels, and if
mhm,
price settles on one side of it, then we can say, okay, let's execute against that side.
exactly, exactly. And let's go on to the 15-minute, 30-minute chart, and we can get a little bit more insight. So here you can see what happened last week. Sure, we dropped down. We basically flushed right below 63.87. I thought, you know, looking at that opening that morning, we were just probably going to go up and test 63.50, 63.41. Didn't quite do that. It was really 63.87 that held, ran up, came back and did a false break, which is right, that part right there. So we held here, low, kind of a false break low, ran up, good rally, counter trend. This is the counter trend, and came back down. This is a big false break, right? Got everybody short, and and ran back up. And this time we held above the 64.32 that we were talking about earlier. So two numbers we were talking about last week, right? On the 30-minute, it was 64.56. And I think we talked about a bracket above or below. So below we had 64.32, 64.56. Above we had 56 and 70, 64.77. And we got above 64.32. We tested out that zone that I marked out on the third, saying that's going to be the resistance. It'll be hard to see getting through it on the third, and we couldn't, right? But 32 held, ran back up, managed to hold. This is what we talk about, classic holding above, right? Nice hold, little flush in the morning before we reversed, and then we ran right up to 65.22. A little bit of shenanigans, didn't quite get to 65. 47, and reversed and stopped pretty much at the 65, 56, 65 in the zone, right? Down here. And now we're back up. I guess we opened up we're back up at above 64.99. And I'll post in the morning after looking at the Globex price action. But for now, leaving it uh, for Monday, obviously 64.99 is going to be the level. And if I was talking on Friday, it would have been 64.77. So the bracket would be 64.99, 64.77. If you can hold above 99, then 65.22 would be the challenge. We're going to go test that out and see what happens. Now, if we can't get to 65.22 Sunday night, Monday, and we slip below 64.99, well, I think the downside opens up. I just see that's how it's going to be. And if we take out 64.77, all this kind of is going to start to open up again. And I'm saying that because of sort of the phase of where we are based on the 30-minute cycles, right? At this point, we really kind of have to hold this. Otherwise, we're just going to blow out a whole nother day and start again on Tuesday, and probably in the same area. So that's that. Is that okay? That's for the 30-minute wrap.
Yeah, no, that's good. We know the levels there, shorter term.
Yeah, that's kind of what it has to be.
Hmm.
All right. So let's move on then. Let's move on to bonds. And if you guys like our work, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the alerts. All right, so finally,
Big
big
rally on
rally,
Friday.
man, big rally back to test the 45 degree,
Yeah, exactly.
and we pretty much went down to the trend line, tested it. So that trend line is holding. We took out the upper trend line, and we're right at 45. Now, we were doing something similar earlier back in April, and I can't but help thinking this is some kind of a setup. Why would I think that? Well, I would think that up until we can settle about 45. Uh, it's just been the nature of the beast, so to speak, right? So we want to see it hold above it. This is no time to be. And of course, it closes right, right on the 45-degree line. And
Seeing
that
how that
line,
happens, isn't it?
yep, well, happens quite often. So it's 116.14 is the line. I've been calling it maybe 16 and a half, go to 18, fine, but that's the level. So the deal here is we want to be able to close above it and hold above, and then we'll see how much we can track the upside. Otherwise, we're just sort of primed some kind of a false break. So watch out. It could be a false break here. It could also be a false break here. So watch the high in late April high, right? When is that? Yeah, April 30th. All right, that's for bonds. So weekly, we talked about the 114 last week being how important 114 is. And, if it's above, we ought to be a little bit stronger. If we get under, it's going to be weaker. And you can see how we sat on there like a birds on a wire for a few weeks. And now we're pumping to the upside. And this is what I mean about on the daily, all these other old highs become potential false break levels. So watch out for that. And we'll pick it up next week and see where we are. But for now, we have to sort of let it go and finish whatever business it has on the upside. And
Where's that 144? Is that like around 119 and change?
144.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. 119. There you go.
that's a possible spot if it
That's
really
it.
wants to giddy up.
If it gets, yeah, that's a very good spot. If it's gonna get up that high.
Hmm.
Let's see. Yeah, yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. Just the
Hmm.
way we're putting this out. That's it for bonds. Let's move on to crude, which I've been all bullish on and still am. Never learn. Well, bullish longs were above 61.61, and boy, are we just tapping right above, tiptoeing right above that. So if we can hold above here, fine. If we can, even if we get down to what is it, down to these levels 60.30, I think this is also acceptable. The thing is, I'm not really looking at the short side. I think the the uh, the odds are to the upside, and at least the risk reward is to the upside. I can wait patiently. Let's see if these lows hold, and we can probably go as low as 60 back in here. Check out this lows of this little pattern that we put in last May. But you can see how 64.75, 65 is also still holding pretty well, right? We've been, we were under it and we got above it. Now we're below it. So one of these days we're going to have to catapult out of here. So we have to wait for that. And that's when, we can get in there and make the big bucks. So with the big boys. Here's a weekly chart. Well, you can see how that 60-degree mark is really important. We've been, messing around with that for a couple of 3 years, and we're still here. Could it go a little lower? Well, sure looks like it, right? Based on the weekly, because we just ran up to the 60 and reversed outside reversal on the weekly. Looks pretty bad and get everybody short. But I don't, like I said, I think the risk is too high for be messing around with crude. Speaking for myself, so let's see what happens. Are you going to cover crude today?
We'll cover NatGas, but I
Not
saw that
gas. Okay.
outside reversal too, and I said, "Oh, what kind of shenanigans are they playing here?"
Yeah, yeah, man.
Let's
It's
see. We have to see
yeah.
what happens this week.
Yep, yep. Let's move on to gold. No shenanigans there, man. It's just marching. It's a straight march.
Just bullish.
Just bullish. No worries. Okay, so when this triangle was happening, and we kept talking about how soon as when we get about 64.30, it's just going to start moving higher. Once the triangle breaks, we're going to go higher. We, go, there was a little bit of a potential false breaky looking pattern here. Came back in, but it didn't really take out the lower line, right? So even if you draw it from here, so it was still bullish, and we kept mentioning how above 33.88, this thing is just ready to go. So when I talk about, hey, above this level is prime to go, even if it's not going. This is what I'm talking about. We come down and we hold above a level. There's air between the level and the lows. And then we start to move higher. We took out 6430 and then bam, march right up 636.08. Couple of 3 days on that, moving higher. So this is our support now. And 3750, we have 3786 to the upside, and I'm hearing so much about, let's be long silver, let's be long gold. Of course, we've been saying this for 5 years, maybe six, probably seven. So anyway, I mean, the next stop is obviously the 3787 level. Let me mark that in there. And 3608 over here, support. Let's take a look at the weekly. Looking great. So this is a weekly square on the weekly chart, and 260 degrees up ends up being right around 3715. So put that in there. So there you go. This is, I mean, how beautiful is that? We broke up into the square, and here we squared out, took a little breather, a little correction, got back above. Basically managed to hold above 3294, especially after this retest of the level. Ran back up to the 50%, came back, plenty of air below, nice retracement, reversal worked out, and up and away. About 3503, we're flying, right? So 3715 is the next stop. Running markets very little to look at, so we get some important squares that we have to work out.
That's right.
And they're coming up a little bit later, but we have plenty of time.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's take a look at silver. Well, we hit the 50% of the square. and I mean, I can cover this in 1 minute. We had 50% of the square. Obviously, resistance, so 42 and a quarter. And, $40 is support, big time support. Whatever it does here, I think it's fine. And it's still bullish, especially if we can hold about 41. So 40, 41, we're in pretty good shape, and 42 and a quarter to the upside. Yeah, that's it. Watch these levels when they hold and reverse, because that's where you get the juice for that run. You guys mark these up on your charts. Watch whatever time frames you're watching with your systems. They should all work out. And looking at the weekly silver, we're well above the 90. This is in great shape, So there's a $40. I don't even have to say anything other than the weekly silver. If we're going to talk about, this $40 holding, we're going to get up to into $51, $52, get to the 50% of the square. So silver has more to go. We can hold the 90. Then somebody sent me a link today, not somebody, a friend, some guy talking about buying silver now.
Yikes.
And I said, go back and look at our videos. And we've been talking about this since 2019.
Oh, this isn't one of your perfect marking topping guys, is it?
It's a new contrarian person.
Okay. Yeah.
So let's see. But
Yeah.
I don't know if there's enough of it out there yet. But I think it's just funny, when I hear that,
Yeah.
hear all these things now. Anyway, getting back to copper. Copper managed to make, from that little surprise low, we can say, tariff low, second tariff low, no tariff low. We managed to make higher highs and higher lows. So I think obvious thing to say here is, we can hold about this 50% at 446. Market's in good shape. It'll stabilize. If you can stabilize above the 50% level, it's in good shape. We can go up and test the $5 mark. Easy peasy, right? Take a look at the weekly. There's a weekly. Well, it's holding about the 144. And like I said, even in the weekly, we have higher lows and higher highs, and let it work itself out. Not much to do here other than to watch that in that direction. So let it, it might take a bit to consolidate, how copper works. So, but the key level, as long as it's above the key levels, market's in pretty good shape. I don't even know how many copper traders watch this, but hey, here's Bitcoin. We called this high, and we called the high where the false break came in, and the entire move down. And I don't think the lows are done. So, but as long as we're holding above 109, we have to give it the benefit of doubt. And the second thing would be could consolidate between 109 and 112, 113. That's the second thing that it could be doing. I'll do a little bit more analysis for next week, but for now, I think there's more downside. So let it, whatever it does, even if it does an ABCD up, still in a very weak position. I say that because I don't think the downside is finished. We know we haven't finished the downside cycle yet. So it's yeah, if we take out 109 again, then it's just gonna take these out and go for another low. Looks like we can certainly go lower. Now, what would invalidate that? I think getting above the 1/3 level, so it'd be like 113. If we can get above that and settle above, then I think probably a little bit more action up here. I just don't see a big run to new highs at this point. Yeah, that's it for Bitcoin. Let's move on to the dollar. Dollar's basically consolidating, is getting narrower and narrower, which means there is a move that's going to come out of that consolidation. So we'll wait for that. And we think it's to the upside because we had a good cycle coming at the low. Obviously, until that cycle low gets taken out, we can't make any other choices. And so we did go higher. We're holding above the first higher low. And long as we're generally above 97, dollars in pretty good shape, especially post the square out. So that's the shape of the dollar. We look at the weekly. So this is sort of like the big dog with the score of 144 pretty much of the week. And I'm not really concerned about the dollar getting weaker. I think let this kind of pull back correction, whatever, finish up. And once it gets the footing right, I think we're going to start moving nicely. Yeah, that's plan A. Plan B would have to be taking out the low. Then we have some trouble, especially if 95.50 would be the downside, the big support area. So we'll see how it works. But for now, we'll stay with the low, and we're looking for a higher low to come in and the markets to reverse, which we really haven't had on the weekly. We've been just kind of stepping down quietly.
I
And
think
that,
this, yeah, Barry, I think it's important to say if that one for, like you said, if that square gets taken out, it's really critical. Remember, one of the sort of principles of these squares is when a big square or major cycle or an ABCD gets taken out after
Mhm.
holding,
Yeah,
it moves powerfully in that direction.
absolutely. Yeah,
So,
that's right. And yeah, so let's see if that happens. It looks like yeah, let's just see. You're right. We got to
mhm.
watch both sides of the street there for now.
Yep.
And I wish it would get it done and get moving, but currencies, bonds just don't do that. They take their time okay. So the euro daily, pretty much the same story. We're managing to hold about the 50% of the square, which happens to be 1646, 1650. So long as we're above that, we can say it could just jump to the upside. But below that, I think it's a little bit weaker. But 1650 is the level to watch, and you can see how we're kind of consolidating right all over that for the last month or so. Yeah, not much to say. This is kind of yucky to trade. I'm not too interested in that. So let's look at the weekly. Weekly again, we're into that territory like, oh my God, this is a surefire breakout to the upside, right? But I'm not exactly hopping on it because like I said, we have the 144 going in, and that's kind of an important square. So let's see whatever they're trying to do here. Let it finish up. And I'm looking to see what reversals show up afterwards. So just kind of waiting for it to act right. And you said you're going to cover natural gas. So we're right above 298. This is a wraparound level so
That's
far.
right.
And the last Hang Seng, we're holding pretty steady. We're well above the 64.85. and the quarter square would be 65, 25065. And long as we're above that, it's in pretty good shape. You can see Thursday we banged it, and then Friday we bounced off of it. As long as we can hold above it, bounce, we can bounce right up into 26 to 240 and test that 50% of the square. But obviously the momentum's dying down, but that's why we look at these key levels, see how they hold up. And that wraps it up for me. That's all I have. Let me put it
Really
back to
good
you.
coverage. Really good coverage.
Thanks, man. Let me put it back to you and let's take a look at the commodities and
Okay.
NASDAQ and everything else you're covering. Wow. There you go.
How about that?
Making a triangles. Jesus.
Yes.
All right. So when you
So
see that, it looks like, well, it's obvious we have to come back and test the downside, the lower line,
somewhere,
right?
yeah, in
Either
here.
that or we break out. I mean,
Yeah. And this is again, the key things that stand out is what Barry pointed out when he was going over the S&P and the ES is that, while it's making new highs, right? We looked like we were going to do three drives here, like one, two, we got a higher low here, said, oh, we're going to go up and take another out.
hmm
It would have been ideal, like we went up into this full square or this half square and got installed out there. But instead, it's triangulating and we're making higher lows and lower highs. So triangles are sort of transition points, right? Between one trend and the next trend. It could be a continuation higher. It could be a move lower. We know the markers though, right? Above it's 24,263. We got to get above and sit on top of that if we're going to go higher. And if we're going to go lower, we got to get below 22,820. And if you break it down as simply as that, that kind of describes it.
hmm
Now, the reason we think this is a decent high, we have timing there, right? We had 90 come in, we had 177 from this high, we had 240 from that high. I mean, there's timing in there, and in addition to the other cycles we've been describing for weeks now, and we haven't been able to take out that high yet. So is it possible that the high is in? Yes. And we'll see that by making a lower high and rolling over and taking out 22,820. Is it possible there's a higher high there? Absolutely. And we'll know that if we take out this high and then settle above 24,263. So these are the two key levels to watch, and that's the daily. Now let's take a look at the weekly. And you see the picture here is a little more ominous, if I could use that word, because we're
Yep.
just banging up against here.
hmm
So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we have this little bar started for this week. This will be 5 weeks
hmm
stalling. And as you alluded to, if you go back to early, late last year, early this year, this is what we did for
hmm
6, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. And then we got that.
And we didn't give in either. We were waiting.
Waiting. And
Yeah,
here's another example of where it happened, right? We push up
exactly.
into a high,
hmm
this is late 21, early
I
22, and
remember
then
that really well. And we went
yeah,
through the same thing. Oh my God, week after week, we're in the same spot, right? But we waited for it to break and got the break.
yep. And there it is. And you can see look at this, Barry. Look at the tests here after it fell below this half square.
Yeah,
One, you got
perfect.
two shots at it,
hmm
as we went down pretty hard. So not saying it's going to repeat exactly, but we know here the level is, call it 24,000, right? 23,966. We've got to get above and sit on top of that, or then we are vulnerable to push back down to at least 21,000.
hmm
So that's a weekly. That's why we do zoom out and look at weeklies and monthlies to get, this sort of bigger picture perspective. Now, this one we've talked about for a few weeks now after I put this chart together. This is really important. Again, this 24,000 level becomes critical because if we get stuck under here, we have a big square, huge square out 180 degrees by roughly, 270 months from the 2002 lows. So this is not a short-term cycle. This is a very big cycle. And if we cannot get above 24,000, we could say this cycle is topped. And
Hmm.
what's it going to do? Could we get in a training range for a long time? Absolutely. Could we get a sharp pullback? Absolutely. We just have to see how the pattern plays out. But that this is the key, this is why this level is so critical. It's a level on a weekly basis and it's a level on a monthly basis. So let's monitor it and just see how it plays out. Anything else you want to add here on the NQs?
No, we're good. I think the indices, we got it. We got it cornered.
Yep. Let's go take a look at Bitcoin a little deeper after Barry showed us the high level numbers. 108 held, 108,000 held here. Tested it for 3, 4, 5 days and it held. Now we have a little bounce up and now we got to see, are we getting caught because this is structural resistance and we're going to come down again to test this? It's possible. What we have to see is 108,000, 108,000's got to hold. If that holds, we can push higher. We can go back up towards the highs, back up towards 119, 120. If we get stuck under 108, then we lose this full square at which is 360. So it's pretty darn important. If we lose that level, then we could go sub 100,000 and test this 96,000 at the half square. And you can see how important it is if you just look back and look at the battles that happened there on the way up. From roughly May until July, we were in that level, in that area. Back here late last year in December and early this year in January, February, we tested it again. So don't take this 108,000 level lightly. It is really, really important just because of what happened in the past at that level.
Hmm. Yep.
In addition to being 360 up,
Yeah.
which as we know is a derivative of 90 and a big, big number. So that's the daily. Let's take a quick look at the weekly. This shows you how well these Gann squares can work, right? Basically got the high at 126, and now we've gotten the swing low down here around 107, 108.
Hmm.
So weekly basis, as long as we hold here, everything's fine, everything's kosher. We can move back up and push up towards the highs. If we lose that, then there's trouble.
Yep.
A lot bigger trouble. Again, because look at how we spent this time here
Hmm.
on the way up. So that's it for Bitcoin. Let's flip over to the commodities. Today we're going to talk about corn, soybeans, and NatGas. All of the other ones are kind of either correcting or going sideways, like cotton. Sugar is interesting. Keep an eye on sugar. It's coming down and looking like it's testing the low. So I'm on the watch there for seeing if we get a marginal low and a reversal, because that would be a classic commodity sort of setup where we get a false break at a low and then do the big move in the opposite direction. And gold, I want to show you one reason why we might hesitate a little bit here. Let's take a quick look.
Hmm.
Let's see. So here's a weekly square I have put on from the 2015 lows, square 72, and we're
Wow. Look at that.
at the high, 3660 is this half square. Now
Hmm.
you can see what it's done at other points at squares. It hits it, corrects, and then goes again. So I'm not saying, oh, this is the top, get out of your gold. I'm just saying if we pull back from here, and pull back right into this area here of those other highs, it wouldn't be surprising, right? Because it tapped that half square. So let's keep that in mind and see if that is any kind of resistance that may kick in here. But bigger picture, it's completely bullish. No concerns about it. As Barry said, as long as we're above roughly 3,500, it's really, really strong and in a strong position. But I just wanted to show you that high came in right at the half square. So let's watch that. And if you're short term, maybe you do something with that. All right, let's go to the other commodities. Let's start with corn. And the thing I wanted to show you about corn is, we made this low, this false break low right on the full square, and we've pushed up, and now we're kind of going sideways a little bit. but that's okay because look at where these lows are compared to this first initial high it made, Barry, before that pullback.
Right.
Right, that's good structure. It's going sideways, which is fine after you get a push up to go sideways and sort of, build strength and build support to keep pushing higher. Let's look at the weekly here. This is the other one, the important chart I wanted to show you too in corn. Notice how we pushed up initially and then we stopped and then we straddled and now we're above this full square at 412.
Hmm.
So this week when you're watching corn, it's really bullish from a weekly basis if the lows stay above this, this 412 area, 411, 412. Because that'll give us a clearing of the square. We cleared it last week. It'll give us a second week of clearing it and give us the potential to push higher. Also remember when the low came in, we talked about this ABCD that was a sort of a completion here
Hmm.
with the higher low, which is why we got that thrust. So 412 weekly basis is really important for corn. So watch that this week. Let's see if the lows can stay above that. And here's a quick look at your monthly. We've already made a higher high this month than last month, so that's a good sign. And we told you last month, because we had a down bar but closed on the high, it gave a good setup for, the ability to print a higher high this month, and we've already done that. So things are progressing with corn in a good manner, and we'd like to see it keep pushing. Daily basis, 446 is going to be your next resistance, and that's that half square right there.
Hmm.
Any comments you got? Anything else you want to add on corn?
No, we're good. You're covering it
Okay.
perfectly. Yep.
All right. Let's check out the next one that's been leading the grains, and that's soybeans. So we had the first push up off this low, right, which was a higher low, right? Series of higher lows. There's your first low, second low, third low. Then we did a little false break, higher low here. Now we pushed up. We were above the 1035. We're kind of straddling it. So let's watch just from a short-term basis, watch 1035 because if we do get stuck under there, it means okay, this could be your first push up, this could be your first sort of wave down. We want to find a higher low compared to this low. If we get that, then we're set up for the third leg, which is, potentially the biggest and fastest move of all. But for this week, let's watch this 1035. As long as we're below it, there's going to be some pressure and the correction's probably still going. If we can pull up and get above it on a daily basis and clear it, then this will be our higher low and we'll be looking pretty good to keep the rally going in beans. Let's take a look at the weekly. You can see why, which is why I was pointing out in gold. Sometimes these half squares signal a correction, not the end of a trend, but a correction that happens. And it looks like that may be the case. 3 weeks ago we came up, made high. 2 weeks ago we tapped it again, and now we're pushing back a little bit on this 1060 level. So weekly basis, we want to watch 1060. We could settle above that. Then we've really got this thing going on a
Yep.
weekly basis. It'll give
Yep.
us a breakout. So you want to watch that level. Let's take a quick look at the monthly. Monthly, you could see here we've got a lot more leeway. We want to stay above 983, which we're well above for now. But if we do come down and test that level must hold because if we get stuck below there monthly, it means another leg down's coming. And that's beans. Anything you want to add to beans here?
Beans are looking good, holding above key levels here. We just have to reverse, you know?
Yep.
Yep.
I mean, pullbacks are a part of, a bull run. They have to pull back to the right level like this, right? See, it's
Mm-hmm.
pulling back right to previous highs. That's
Yep.
good. As
Yep.
long as it holds there, it's good structure, building the sort of platform to move higher. So let's watch it and let's see what happens with that. And lastly, we want to talk about this little dog that we've been talking about for the last few weeks about, hey, we held that 282 level. Now we're pushing up. Can we build the platform here to go up and test the half square at 341? Well, so far so good, right? Made the false
Mhm.
break low, pushed above here, above the 282, tested it, right? That's a bar that came back and tested it, made a little air above the full square, and now we reversed.
Hmm.
As you can see, we're sitting on top of these highs here. So there is a little support there. Now let's see, can we keep pushing and go up to 342? I think that's kind of the next area where and target I think we're heading towards. And we're sitting at 304, so there's a lot of room to run as long as we, stay above this 282. That's the daily. Let's take a quick look at the weekly. Weekly, we came smack down, hit the trend line, hit the half square. I mean, that was the thing that said, "Hey, I need to start talking about this because this is a nice weekly pullback ending on support, both trend line and half square support." And since then, we've had, one, two, almost 3 weeks up. Let's see if we can make a higher high this week and keep pushing. If we do, if we hold this level and keep pushing, 371 is, where we're going to get the next resistance. Take a quick look at the monthly. Here's your monthly. We're threatening. We didn't quite do it yet, but we're threatening already to make a higher high compared to last month. We're about a penny
Hmm.
under it so far.
Would give us a
Uh,
nice reversal if we do that.
yeah, we get a monthly reversal. Then it starts clicking in. 314.8 is the last month's high. So that's what we're looking to exceed. We've done like 313.5 so far. So this month, let's see. Let's see if we can do that. And that's not gas. It is very early. But again, I would not, you know, jump in with both feet. Look for entries on the lower time frames, pullbacks to support, and then you got a decent risk reward trade here. I know you follow Natty pretty closely, Barry. Anything else you want to add here?
No, we're good. Just patiently waiting for that. Thanks, too.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
and patiently is a good word because thank you for being patient with us. We haven't gotten, we didn't get this video out on Saturday like we usually do because we usually record Friday late or Saturday morning, and
Hmm.
just the travel schedule was rough this week. So, thanks for being patient. We hope the show's helpful. The key thing is we covered the markets and the levels that if you monitor those levels, you'll be able to make a good risk reward assessment of what makes sense, which side of the market to be on, because those levels, show you the place where the odds flip for either the bulls or the bears. So good job, Barry. I'm glad we were able to get this done. And hopefully next week we'll be back on schedule and get things out on Saturday as we normally do. But have a great week, everybody, and take care.
All right. Good job, Ben. And you guys take care. We'll see you next week.
See you next week,
All right.
everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.